Welcome to Simplify to Scale, a show dedicated to helping you scale a high impact and high profit business that you love without all of the complexity and chaos that can keep you trapped in the day-to-day. I'm your host, Krista Grasso, and with decades of scaling experience, I know what actually works and what's just hype. So if you are done with all of the one-size-fits-all scaling advice and all of the overnight success promises, and instead you want proven practical strategies that will help you simplify operations, elevate your leadership, amplify profits, and scale sustainably, let's dive in and get started. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Simplify to Scale show. Today, one of my very favorite humans ever is here with me, and I am so excited for you to get to know Sloane if you don't know her yet, or to learn more about her incredible brilliance. And this one is for all of you who are high performers, which I know is probably all of you listening. And so instead of me reading your intro, I'm going to do something a little fun. Sloane, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about you and what you do and what you're super passionate about?
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be in this conversation with you and here today. My whole world is about transformation. So that has been a key experience of my life, which I'm excited to share more with you in this conversation. And then also the work that I do is helping people transform. And when I first started really realizing that was the core of who I am and how I help people, I was a little hesitant to that word because I think it's kind of generic and overused in our business, but it is the truth of what I do. I help people who know more is possible in their lives. And like your listeners, people who are performing at really high levels, who probably from the outside, it looks like they have it all, they have it made. And then behind the scenes, they're like, this isn't working, or I know more is possible. No matter how much I achieve, I keep feeling like this isn't all there is for me. And I help people step into, yes, I have finally arrived into the life, the business, the success, the impact, the relationships that I knew were possible for me. So I'm very passionate about that.
Yeah. And I resonate with that so deeply because I know for me, typical high performer who grew up in corporate. And for any of you listening who have that corporate background, of course, like you're rewarded for no matter, it's like you have to work harder and harder and harder. And you're rewarded for being the first one in and the last one out. Remember the days when we used to like actually be in an office? And then it's like, no matter what you do, it's like you're only as good as the last thing that you did. And so you're constantly chasing that next big achievement and next big achievement. And I remember when I transitioned fully into working in my own business instead of working for someone else, and I took all of those habits with me. It took me a while to break from that and to even recognize that that was more conditioning than it was just who I was as a person. Do you find that that happens with people a lot?
Yes, totally. Because we are all conditioned in the way of extraordinary results equals hard work or comes from hard work. And that might be true in my opinion, kind of backwards school setting that we all came up in of memorize, sit still and be quiet, do what I say, all those ways of being, then hard work is rewarded. But then when we take it and go out into the world, you and I both know, and everybody listening, we know hard work does not create extraordinary results. It actually typically creates a slightly above average results. And so then we have to find our way into the fact that extraordinary results are actually created from extraordinary choices. And hard work really isn't an extraordinary choice. And so that's the big evolution of, I believe, creating holistic success in a way that you feel good, not only on the journey, but also when you reach the destination that you're going for.
You just said like the magic word. So to me, I hear people talk about freedom a lot, and I love the idea of freedom. But to me, the freedom that is the most important freedom of all is the freedom of choice. And I think you could talk about having more money and more time and more of all these things. But when you have freedom of choice, you get to actually choose what's right for you. So how does that show up in your work? Tell me more about that choice, because I resonate so deeply with that word.
Well, I have a framework that's on 5 core beliefs, which is the feminine path to creating success. So when you live these 5 core beliefs, you are on the path of your own highest success, impact, and connection in your life. And one of the core beliefs is I choose alignment in this moment. And one of the things I think we really miss, and especially if you talk about freedom, is it can feel really easy to think I'll be happy when, or I'm going to grind, I'm going to do all this stuff now, I'm going to sacrifice myself, and then I'm going to get to this point where finally I'm in this Mecca, this heaven, I have the freedom, can do whatever I want. And in reality, the way you feel on the journey is the way you feel when you reach the destination. So the only way to feel good on your journey is actually to choose in what's alignment with yourself, to choose your own truth. And this is where I see a lot of founders and entrepreneurs and people really go off on a path that becomes very, very hard, is choosing what I think I should do, choosing what my coach said is going to make success or what I saw this other person doing, choosing from ways that are choosing because I'm afraid I'll lose a person or I'll disappoint them or things will fall apart in my life or, a million other ways that we're conditioned and taught to choose out of alignment. When we realize that every single choice we make is actually creating our lives, then we step into this whole new level of power to start to choose in every micro choice, what's my truth here? What is the highest path here for me? And I do have a belief that my highest path is also for the highest good of all. So this isn't about becoming so selfish and you don't care about other people and you're, stepping on others. It's actually the very opposite. It's just that we have to choose from the highest place, which I believe is coming from inner guidance, or you could call it God, or you could call it your highest self, however you resonate.
Beautiful. I love that. And that fits. I've heard you talk before about that, like external achievement versus that inner alignment. And I think that is so smart. And so for someone who says, maybe I am chasing more external achievement, maybe I don't even know what my inner alignment is. How do you help them get clear on that or strip away all the distractions?
Yeah, it's so good. I consider this one of the greatest life adventures that you could go on because it's really so personal. Understanding your own inner alignment isn't just about hearing people talk about that. I mean, we've all heard those things. It isn't even about someone telling you about how they find alignment, but it's actually getting to know the nuance between what I call the voice in your head that's emanating on some level from your thinking mind versus your inner guidance, which for me is connected to God, connected to life, connected to the highest truth that we could have as humans. And in my experience, the voice in your head is the one that'll be like rambling on, that'll always do like a circular conversation. Well, what about this? No, what about that? But oh yeah, it could be this. And there's kind of never an end point to it. It's often the voice in speaking in fear. Whereas inner guidance, in my experience, sometimes is words. It could be a quiet, succinct statement, call Krista. It also might be if you presented a choice to me and I'm thinking about the options, I might on a yes, it might feel like I'm excited, but I'm kind of scared about it. I have ideas about it. The path might feel lit in my mind. And the no feels sort of like, maybe it feels a little safe, but it's like, oh, or I don't have any inspiration around it. And so it's really cool. And I'm curious to ask you what your experience is with it, because I think the more we can hear other people's ideas, then sometimes it's like, oh yeah, for me, it's like this. And the place you can trace it back to is everybody has an experience of having chosen something off your beaten path that you just knew was right. And if you trace back to that and start to think about, what did it feel like? How did you think about it? And really unpack that, and then do it again and again and again in your life, you get to know what your truth is. So I'm curious, what's your experience of this? How would you describe it?
Well, it's so funny because I'm a business strategist. Like strategy just is I strategize my strategy. Like everything I do is strategy. So I live in my head a
Mm,
lot. And it can be hard for me. Like I've put a lot of focus, especially over this past year, in trying to actually listen to my intuition more.
mm,
But one of the things that was really powerful for me and that helped was recognizing I was talking to someone about my human design and they were pushing me to like not think and just make an instant sound because I am more sacral and more
mm.
and so being
Okay.
able to do that, and I've learned like, just ask me a question and my initial gut reaction before I start to talk through it and justify it and think about it and come up with all the 27 ways why it could work or wouldn't work and all the different things is usually my right decision. And as I've learned to do that more, I've learned what that feels like in my actual body. So sometimes I don't even need to answer, but I can tap into that feeling to know what the right answer is. And I
Mm.
need to just have it be an instantaneous thing before I let my brain kick in and start to go through what it does best. It's like there's not a hamster in a wheel in my brain. There's like a whole army of hamsters in all sorts of wheels.
And they're
And they're,
busy.
yeah, trying to get at one another. So it took me a long time to learn that. And I think that will be an ongoing, continuous journey for me because I naturally gravitate towards my mind.
It's so good. Yes. And yes, for human design, that really changed my understanding of how I make decisions, which is in a very different way than you. And I want to say, I love strategy. I used to be a corporate lawyer. I've worked with hundreds of entrepreneurs and helping them grow and scale their companies. And I think strategy is so important and so amazing. I think working with mentors and coaches is so important and has revolutionized every single area of my life. And the way I've come to really relate to strategy with all this is that the first step is finding your truth. So let's use an example would be what are the next steps of how I'm going to scale my business? Okay. And I'll tell you, a year and a half ago, I was really feeling this draw to do my TEDx talk. And so rather than speaking to a bunch of people about it, I had to get quiet and see, what am I fantasizing about in my mind? What secret thoughts do I have? What would I really love to have happen, even if it seems like so far away or so challenging? And then when I get clarity on my inner guidance, then I go to strategy. Well, okay, what are the next steps for me to do that? And then I might talk to other people, but even along the way, there are a million ways that you can do a TED talk, that you can, different coaches you can hire, that you can, share it with other people. And for me, at each of those steps, there's taking into account what all the mentors and people helping are saying. I think I had 12 people who were significant in the outcome of that talk who were helping me. And I'm taking all their advice in and all this feedback in, but I'm still using my truth and my awareness on the inside as much as possible to determine the trajectory and where I'm focusing and what we're doing with it. Because if I let other people or some kind of outside thing drive it, it's not that it can't be good or can't be a success. It's just that a lot of times that's the hard path. There's something innate in us that is actually driving us on the easier path, even if it seems more challenging in the short term.
So good. All right, I want everyone to rewind and listen to that one again. But that being said, I'm glad you brought up your TEDx talk because I thought it was absolutely brilliant. And for those of you listening, if you've not heard it yet, if you're new to Sloane and her beautiful, amazing work, we'll put that link down below in the show notes. So make sure that you check that out. But tell us a little bit more about the TED Talk and what drew you to really feel like you wanted to create this.
I have just had this long time vision of getting the word out to as many women as I possibly can that the ways we create success are really hard for us as women. And actually, it doesn't have to be so hard. There is another path, and that's the foundation of my work. but it's not logical. It's not necessarily linear. It's just not what we've been taught. We've been taught the masculine path of creating success. And I know that really well. I know that really well. As I mentioned, was operating as a corporate attorney that's mostly men. That's a very masculine business and world. And I built an entire law firm in that energy. So I know it does work and we can create success with it. It just ends up that it's depleting for us as women, that it can tend to drive us on a path that's not necessarily in alignment, or maybe some of the pieces aren't. And it can be hard for us. We just haven't been taught how to create success true to our nature. And so I have written a whole book on this topic that is hopefully coming out in 2027. And my vision for the talk was, I know, I'm so excited. My vision for the talk was to take the core idea of the book and bring it out into the world so that people could really at least feel like, what is this woman talking about? And want to explore more. And whether that's with me or in any of the other many ways that we can explore this topic is like, what if I were creating success according to my truest nature as a woman? What would that look like? And by the way, I just want to say, to some extent, this also applies to men, because it might not be the predominant nature that they have. And of course, I recognize and want to just call out, there are some women who would have a predominantly masculine nature and vice versa with men. But if you are a woman with a predominantly feminine nature, that would apply of what I'm talking about. And if you're not, even if you don't, we all have masculine and feminine on the inside. And we've all been taught to create in ways that are really skewed towards the masculine. And for both men and women, there's a whole piece of creation that we're kind of missing out on, these tools and possibilities and this path. So the TED Talk was to get the word out about it, still is, and just to share with as many people as possible this idea that so much more is possible for us as women, for us as humans. And it's up to us now to really pioneer and create that path in our lives and in our businesses.
Yeah, it's so interesting because if you had talked to me when I was early in my career and I was like deep in a very male-dominated type of industry, I was the first female project manager in my company. I pushed so hard to get it. I was like the only person, I had like 20 years on everybody. I was in my early 20s and everyone else was like 40-something, 50-something men, right? And so like your way of being successful is you work as hard as possible. And it was like, I don't even think there was a drop of feminine in what I did. It was pure masculine. And I was successful. But my God, did I work hard, and I burned myself out so badly. And I always used to hear people talk about a lot of what you're talking about. And at that time, it felt like this fluffy, like, yeah, wouldn't that be nice? But that's not how the real world works kind of like mentality. And it wasn't until I actually said, no, stay open to the fact that there might be another way, and started to really work through releasing a lot of my beliefs and releasing just a lot of the ways I felt like I had to perform in order to be successful, that I realized there really is another way.
Yes.
And I'm so happy that this is what you teach, and you just have such a beautiful way of sharing it and helping people discover that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's really interesting because what happens with men and women, and the difference between, hard work, let's say, is men have what's called single-pointed focus. One of their natural states of being is to focus on one thing at a time. And anybody who's been the subject of that, when you have a man's full attention, it feels so good, especially for women, but I think for everybody, it's so amazing. Women have what's called diffuse awareness. So we can be thinking about many different things at one time while still being engaged and focused on something. So that's how, woman can walk into a house and see the dishes and the dirty clothes and all this stuff happening and is like, what's going on here? Where a man could walk into the same house and be like, hi, how's your day? And it's not even part of the awareness. It's just the kid there or the, partner there. And so what happens for women when we do hard work is we're not only working hard, we're working on a 24-hour cycle. We're expected to show up every single day the same, which is not what our physiology requires. We have the 28-day cycle where our bodies are significantly different over that time compared to men who have a 24-hour cycle. And then also we're working hard with the diffuse awareness. So we're still thinking about all the home and the car and the this, and that is exhausting and depleting over time. And so there's actually over 50 years of research in this field called subjective well-being, which shows that for all people, when we have higher levels of emotional well-being, when we feel better on the inside, we create more wealth, more connection, better relationships, more impact in the world, pretty much in every single area of our lives. So this whole idea that I can grind now and create the ultimate success down the line is an illusion. It's been proven with tons of research that if you're not at your best, you don't create in the highest ways.
So fascinating. And it's so true, and yet it can be so hard to see when you're in the middle of it. And then you step outside of it and you're like, why did I ever think that the other way was the way to approach this? But that's so fascinating. I love the research on that. I didn't realize some of those stats. That's so interesting.
Yes. I love what you said, once you step outside of it. I had that experience when I sold my law firm. And then looking back, I created a pretty successful corporate law firm. And then also looking back, I was like, whoa, I kept that really limited and small by the way I was doing it. And doing it in a very this is the goal. This is what I'm going to do this year. This is how it has to be. And just working for most of it. And then realizing that was the hard, slow way, actually.
Yep.
Yeah.
But, you pay attention on social media, and we're doing it wrong if we're not just working 24/7, busting out 1,000 pieces of content an hour. And,
So true. It's so true.
But with that being said, something I've heard you talk about is you say that there's a different measure of success called, I believe you call it true pleasure. Can you dive into that a little bit and tell us more about it?
Yes. If you consider a peak experience of happiness, this is an amplified experience for women where we actually experience a lot of different things at one time. And so I've used this term true pleasure, which is not about an outside experience and what people normally think of as pleasure. It's about the inner experience that we can have. And when we cultivate living in this way, that is the place from which we create our highest levels of success, impact, and connection. And one thing that's really important to know about true pleasure is that it's not about Pollyanna put on a happy face and pretend everything's okay. It's not about being someone who you're not. It's actually a journey that you go on to cultivate this state in whatever your unique way of it is. And then when you live in it, you can still have challenges in life and you can still have things that go ways that you don't want them to go. But ultimately, you feel really good, generally, regardless of what's going on the outside. So it's a different way of thinking about success. It's tending to your inner state first to create success, knowing that from that is where all of the greatest success that's possible in your life flows from.
Amazing. So tell everyone about you. Tell them more. I know you gave your intro, but how do you work with clients and where can people find you and learn more about your work?
Well, I love to connect online. On Instagram is probably my favorite, but I love to connect. I'd love to be in touch. I'd love to hear from people. Personal connection and getting to know people deeply is just one of the most favorite things that I do and experience. And with the transformational work that I do, most of it is around transformational experiences. Because what I've found is that coaching and talking is really important and really profound. And then when you couple that with having a new experience of yourself, it's exponential. And so I host women's retreats virtually and in person. We're actually doing a women's retreat in Tulum in a couple months.
Tulum sounds wonderful.
I
What a
can't
better
wait.
place for a transformational experience.
Yes. Yes.
Amazing. So there's a question I ask everybody, and I'm so curious to hear what you have to say. But in your business, how do you scale smarter and keep things lean?
Such a good question. The first thing that comes to mind is continuously building a better and better quality relationship with myself. The place that I've in all of my experience of building and scaling businesses and working with clients who are doing the same, the places where we overspend, overcommit, overfunction at its core on the deepest levels tend to be the places where we're trying to get approval, where we're going against the inner guidance and our truth, where we're afraid, oh, I have to do this advertising because that's what they did, or I have to add these team members because that's what I think I should do, rather than slowing it way down, getting into my truth and my clarity, and even pausing until I do. This unconscious race to being bigger and having more and making more money and building the team tends to be more like throwing spaghetti on the wall, which I'm so glad of the work that you do because I know you're helping people scale consciously. And that's really what this is all about. And on the deepest levels is, how am I treating myself in this? Because if you treat yourself in a loving, careful, conscious way throughout scaling your business, you will build a business that you love and that nourishes you and supports you. And if you build a business based on self-sacrifice or fear or some illusion that later you're going to feel better in this thing that you feel awful in, then you're going to be building something that's really hard to untangle from that original energetic that you've been using to build it in. So it always comes back to, for me, how am I treating myself in this decision? And then continuously making that a love.
So good. So brilliant. All right. Any final things to share with the listeners? Any final things for those who are listening and saying, okay, I need to do that?
I think the biggest thing that's coming to mind right now is, if any part of you feels like this is too big or this is way out there or things are going so fast, it seems hard to, how would I even start or where would I focus? The number one place to begin is finding some space for yourself. I had a client years ago who became a private client, and she was on the verge of burnout. And I was talking to her about this, and she told me years later, she's like, when you first told me to slow down, I thought to myself, am I really paying this woman all this money to tell me that I need to meditate? And I was like, yeah, that's exactly what you're doing and what I'm telling you. So a lot of our problems come from feeling like we don't have time to stop and think. And in the tradition of the meditation that I do, one of the things that they say is, the more you feel like you don't have time to meditate, the longer you need to do it. And I really find that that's true. So find, even if you can start with 5 minutes in your morning, to just sit and breathe. You can let your thoughts flow. You can focus on your breath. Just start making bit by bit some space for yourself. And if you're already doing that, that's amazing. Can you make it a little more? Because the most successful people have a lot of space to think, a lot of space to make clear decisions. And that really is the path of pretty much everything we've talked about here today, is the having space for yourself to make these things happen.
Yeah, I love it. So tell everyone your website if they want to go find you immediately, which you all should.
Thank you, Krista. It's therealsloane.com, and that's Sloane with an E. And I'd love to hear from you. So thank you so much for having me. What a pleasure.
Yes, thank you so much. I hope you all got as much out of this conversation as I did. I will see you again next week, and you'll find all of the links to find Sloane in the show notes. If you are a visionary founder ready to get yourself out of the day-to-day operations of your business and scale in a much more simple, sustainable way, I have just the thing. Register to join me for my Scale Simpler workshop at scalesimpler.com. In it, I break down the hidden barriers that keep you trapped in the day-to-day of your business and what to do to finally extract yourself once and for all so things do not keep coming back onto your plate. And if you're someone who partners with founders as their right-hand advisor, consultant, or fractional, I invite you to explore our scaling certification and licensing programs at strategicopsinstitute.com.